Welcome back to day number 2 of my 31 days of Halloween themed drawing tutorials here on YouTube. I'm BJ Dell, and for the entire month of October, I'm going to release a new Halloween themed drawing tutorial every single day of the month. Day number 2 is today. I'm going to show you how you can draw this cute mummy, all from start to finish, no time lapse, all in real time. So if you want to follow along and make this, keep watching. All right, so let's draw a mummy. I'm using a 4000 by 4000 300 DPI canvas. For my brush, I'm gonna use my standard inker brush that's part of my cartooning set. And the color palette for this, I've already got made up. You can actually download this color palette for free. I'll link it in the description below. Just go to my website, bjdell.com, underneath the YouTube reference material section. You can download this. It's not the actual Procreate file extension for a color palette. It's just a screenshot. But what you can do, download the JPEG, save it to your camera roll, and then insert a photo. It's gonna bring in the color palette on a separate layer, and then you can just long press on the different colors as we use them in this tutorial, and you'll have the exact colors that I'm using on here. So let's get started. The first thing that we're gonna do is pick this color here. The first one, this is gonna be the overall color, the Bandages, and we're gonna start out by drawing a circle. So just draw a circle here with your finger, hold down with one, hold down with the other, it locks it into a perfect circle, and we can drag and drop the color in there. Let's kind of move this around, going up to the arrow here, making sure snapping's turned on. We can get it in the center. Once we have the orange lines going up and down, it's in the center. But I don't want it to be a perfect circle. I want to shape this a little differently. So we're going to go to warp, and I want the top to kind of widen out into a more narrow bottom, like so. Then also have kind of a flatter top to it as well. So this is going to be the overall shape of the mummy head. And once we get that to where we want it, we can just go ahead and go back to freeform to make sure that we get it in the center here again. And once that's where we want it to be, just lock it in there. And we've got the shape for our mummy head. So we're off to a great start. How easy is that? One thing here too, I want to add an outline to this. So to do that, let's go ahead and go up to our layers menu, hit the plus button. Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's go ahead and slide the layer to the left, and let's duplicate it. This is going to be a lot easier this way. So doing it like this, go down to layer 1 on the bottom, back up to our color palette, and we're going to select this brown color, the second one from the left there. We're just going to drag and drop this in. And you see it doesn't do anything because this layer is underneath the layer 1 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back up to our arrow, making sure uniform is selected. And we're just going to drag this out. I am going to zoom out just a little bit and move this so we can see the entire thing. Making sure uniform is selected, we're just going to drag this out so we have a nice outline around our shape. I'm going to turn off snapping here so we have a little bit more control. We just want the lines to be the same width around. And I think that looks pretty good there. So if we go there, lock it in, and you'll see, gives us a nice outline there. Now this is gonna be a big solid brown shape here. So we just want it to be the outline because that's gonna play into what we're doing later. So let's go ahead and select this layer. And then we wanna go down to the bottom brown layer and hit clear. So basically, this is going to leave a perfect line around there. So this is going to allow us to actually bring this layer up on top now, like so. So that way we are good. We don't have to worry about some other things going forward. Believe me, it's going to make things a lot easier doing it like this. So now let's go ahead and start on the actual bandages that wrap around the head. So let's go ahead and add a new layer here, and we're going to set this one as clipping mask. So what this is going to do, it's going to allow us to draw on this layer, and it's not going to go outside of anything that we've got laid down on this bottom layer. So to do this then, let's go ahead and just start laying in some lines across here. I think that's a little too thick there. We want these lines to match up pretty much with our outline. So we'll get one kind of here towards the center. I think that looks good size-wise and everything matches up. And then one down here. So this is going to be basically the middle section. This is going to be where our face is. And then we're just going to start bringing up other lines around here for how the bandages wrap around the head. You can do these in different directions. You can have, thicker areas over here. So this is a lot thicker than here. And then you can pull this one the opposite direction. So you've got a thicker one over here. And then you can draw some coming the opposite way there. Key here is you just really want to make sure that these lines all stay the same thickness as the ones on the outline. This one I don't really like too much. I think I'm going to break this one up a little bit here and do some other ones like this. So that looks good. The other thing then, of course, I don't really want the face coming from one edge to the other. I want to have some more bandages in here. However, if I start drawing these, I'm going to have to be perfect as far as not getting these too far over. And it's going to be really hard. If I get them too far over, I'm going to have to go back in and erase. And then I'm probably going to erase this line here. So an easy trick here is just make a new layer to do those overlapping lines. And then as I start to draw these in, you're going to see how easy this is to fix. So any of those parts that overlap, I can just go in and erase, and you'll see I'm not destroying those lines that I did previously. Everything stays exactly where it should, and I've got total control over those new lines that I just did. This is something I'll use a lot in doing outlines and inking just because it makes it so much more forgiving, and then pinching these together makes these all one layer again, and we're good to go. It's all in the same now. So from here, I've got the lines for the bandages. Kind of want to add some more details, and of course, as the bandages wrap around the head and come over top of one another, they're going to have some folds, they're going to have some creases. So we're going to work on that next. We're going to stay on the same layer. We're going to use the same brush. However, with these, whenever there's an overlap like here, we're going to start to pull up just some thin tapered lines, kind of signifying and representing those creases. The key with this is you want to make sure that these lines are really thin. They're not too thick because you don't want the viewer to confuse these creases for the actual bandages wrapping around. Things will get really, really busy if you go too thick with these, and the viewer is not going to know exactly what's going on. So by keeping the line weights of these really thin, it's going to help kind of bring home that idea that, hey, these are the creases that are happening because of the bandages folding around and wrapping. The other key here is you want to make sure that the lines go along with the flow of the line of the bandage. You'll see here it drops in really close right here, but really wide back here, and that looks off. So you want to make sure that these have that same flow, the same direction as the bandages you've already got laid in there. So it might take some erasing and coming back over and over again to get that perfect line. So don't be afraid just to stop and erase and try it a few times to get that perfect line. We'll just do these around here. Maybe some more over here. You'll see, like I said, just really thin lines. These don't have that same line weight as the outlines. You'll see pulling back now just how easy that is to see where the bandages are and where the creases are. And then from here, if you want to, you can go around and maybe just add in some extra dots. So you've got some just cool little textures going on. Kind of draw the eye in, make it a little bit more interesting to look at. A little bit more stuff going on. So there we go. I think that looks really cool. The next thing we can do then is let's go ahead and maybe add in some extra bandages here in the back to where once everything wraps around, the bandage is going to end and kind of fall off. So let's do that next. And to do that, let's go ahead and I'm trying to think what layer I want to use this one on. Let's go ahead and we can just do it on the same one. I think it'll be okay. And for this one, once again, we'll just, this one's not going to work that way. Let's make a new layer then, because this one's set to clipping mask and we won't be able to draw outside if that's set to clipping mask. So we'll just draw some bandages around here. We cut that out like that and do a little V here. So it looks like the bandage is kind of cut there in the center. We can draw some more lines there. Maybe drawing one here off to the side as well. Let's again erase in here to kind of cut that in. And then maybe one down here, almost like a kind of like a three-dimensional banner type of thing. I'm going to switch over to my streamline here to do this one. If we just draw almost like an S coming out of here, making sure that the thickness stays the same. I'm going to erase here so that this comes in really sharp. And then pulling down a line here on the outside. You're going to see how this starts to form that kind of three-dimensional banner. And then we'll draw another line this way. Draw another line here at the bottom. And then a line here to connect that, and a line here to connect that. Then we can just erase those overlaps here on the edge. Just making sure that this lines up perfectly here. Want to keep that line weight pretty much the same. I'm not going crazy with different line weights on the actual outline parts. So that looks good. And then of course we can add in some of those extra curves around here again, just to show where those folds are. There we go. I think that looks really, really neat. One thing I don't like, see how this one matches up perfectly with that one? Probably want to pull this one out just a little bit. I don't want that to get confused with what it is. So just by doing that, it's little things like that that's going to go far in making a good design. Something like that would kind of hurt it. So I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and go back up to our main color here. And then let's go ahead and go down to our layer 1. That's our main base color for here. And let's just go ahead and fill in, oops, these colors. Of course, we're gonna have to color these by hand. We can't drag and drop with these because they're on a separate layer. We can't set it as reference either because we didn't fill in the gaps on the lines. So we're gonna have to work with that. See, there's a little part that showed up there because of that clipping mask. So we're gonna have to go back in and erase that on that other layer. But that's not a problem. Same thing there. There's another one there. So if we go back up to our layer 3, and this might not be showing up on yours depending on how far you went with those initial lines. They showed up for me. They might not show up for you. So there we go. That's the base is done. So let's go ahead and start working on the face now. So going back to the layer 1, let's make a new layer in between there. And then let's go back up to our color palette and let's choose this green color. And then let's just go ahead and color in around here. This one we can do the color fill on if we get this completely connected. Then we got that shape closed in. We can just drag and drop this. So that's going to be the base color for our face that's coming through that you can see because the bandages don't wrap across there. But now we need to give him some eyes. So let's do that next. Back up to our color palette. We're going to use this 4th color over, this kind of dark brown color. And let's go ahead and make a new layer here. And let's just go ahead and draw a oval shape and drag and drop this in. Then we can kind of play around with it. Maybe make it a little bit bigger, move it up here, kind of twist it around a little bit until it's right where we want it. Oops, too far. Try that again. I'm on the wrong layer now. Went back too far. I'm not sure why it jumped like that, but try this again. There we go. Drag and drop, back up to our arrow. And I think that looks pretty good there. So go ahead and lock that in. Now I'm going to go ahead and slide this one over to the left, and I'm going to duplicate it. So we've got a left eye, and then as we move this over then, now we've got a right eye. And then I'm going to shrink it in and down a little bit. So I want it to have that kind of wacky cartoon look to it. So the left eye is going to be a lot bigger than the right eye. And you can see they're overlapping here. There's a few ways to go about that if you want to go ahead and select things and erase clear layers. But for me, I'm just going to combine these together, and I'm just going to erase this by hand. Makes it easy. All right, so there we go. From here, I think I'm going to add the nose in next. We'll keep this on the same layer then as the mouth, or as the eyes here. We're not going to do a mouth actually. And this one just almost like an upside down W. We can connect that, fill it in, and then just erase that overlapping again. You want to erase these two and make it sharper, totally up to you how you want it to look. So we'll give them kind of a sharp one there. And then I think from here, I'm going to go back to my regular standard inker. I'm just going to add some taper lines around the eyes just to add some details. It's like kind of like bags around the eyes here. There we go. Maybe some extra dots here, just like we did on the outside. All right, so that's going to be the face. Of course, we need to add some actual eyes inside, those kind of insets. So let's do that next. So let's go ahead and go to our plus button here to add a new layer. And let's go to white on our color palettes. And then we're just going to draw another circle. One finger holding down, the other finger locking it in, dragging and dropping. I'm going to zoom in really close here because as we move this around, we want to make sure this comes right to the edge of those ones that we've already got in there. So right there, it comes right to that edge. That's exactly where we want it. And then we can go ahead and slide this one to the left, or if you want to draw another circle, totally up to you. I'm just going to duplicate this one. Then going back up to our color palette, I'm going to select this rust color, drag and drop that in there. That's going to be the pupil. Go into uniform. We can change the size of this. Once again, just making sure that it doesn't come out too far. We want it to come exactly like our other one did. So there we go. We've got the left eye. Let's go ahead and do the right eye. To save us some time, we've already got this one highlighted in blue. Slide this one to the right as well. And let's group these. You're going to see, though, as I did that, it shut off the clipping mask here. So let's grab this group, bring it up over top of this other one, and turn our clipping mask back on here. And all those disappear. So that shows you what it would look like if clipping mask wasn't on and how useful that is. So with this new group selected, slide this to the left and duplicate. Let's go back up to our arrow, and we're going to flip this one horizontally, shrinking it down a little bit and pulling it over here to the right. Once again, zooming in to make sure that it fits inside. So there we go. Let's go ahead and add in some highlights to the pupils. So go into the white now. And let's start with that right. Actually, let's start with the left-hand side. Let's just draw a circle in here for a big highlight. And then we can just touch for our second one. Same thing here. Go into the pupil on the right eye, bigger circle, and then a smaller one. And now that we've got those done, we can go ahead and just pinch these all together and combine those groups. So they're all in one now. There's no reason to have those separate. So there we go. That's basically our base color flats done. So now we can go ahead and start adding some shadows and highlights. That's up next. So to do that, let's go ahead and make a new layer. And then on this one, let's go ahead and drag this down below layer 3 that has the lines. That's going to be the one that we use here. And going back up to our color palette, we're going to choose this one next to that rust color that we just used, this darker brown. That's going to be our shadows color. And it's going to be, like I said, on this layer here that we just made. So let's go ahead and start to kind of fill in just a big section here. I like to get a large section started. That way I can adjust the opacity and kind of see overall what it's going to look like. So now that I've got that, going up to our layers and our blend mode under our layers, this is how you get to opacity now with the change in 5x Procreate. And I think probably about, let's see where I'm at here, 20, maybe 25% looks pretty good. 24%, close enough. I think that looks pretty good as far as the shadows go. And then we can kind of just start adding in shadows in other parts. So of course the overlaps are going to have shadows. So this bandage here is on top of these other ones. So you're going to have a shadow there. This bandage up here is going to be on top of these. So you're going to have an overlap there. And let's go ahead and maybe have the light source coming in this way, obviously because of the shadow being here. So anything that falls on the right hand side of these, that's where the overlap and the shadow is going to be. This one here, can do a smaller shadow here. And then of course here you can do shadows underneath the folds if you want to as well. Depends on how detailed you want to get with your design. If you want to add the shadows under every single one of these, if you just want to leave them off, totally up to you. Just make sure that it's following the principles of where your light source is coming in from. Those, and you'll see that eye there is coming out a little bit there, so I'm going to erase that a little bit more. There we go. This is going to have an overlap here and also here. That one I went a little too far with. Shadows down under here. And as I got in here and zoomed in, you can see that I kind of missed some areas there for the colors, so I can go back in if I want to and fix those here in a second. Got some white showing through. If you do this though and you switch back and forth between layers, just make sure before you go back and start with what you were doing previously, just remember to go back to the layer that you were on, because there's nothing worse than doing a lot of work and then realizing I'm on the wrong layer now. And went outside there too. That's one of the struggles for digital artists, is being on the wrong layer after hours and hours of work and then not being able to undo back to where you were. It sucks. I've done it before. I know. I feel you if that's happened to you before. The best of us do the same thing. It happens to everyone. So don't beat yourself up for it if it happens to you. See, this one I'm going to kind of bring out a little bit further just so it follows that crease. It's going to look a little bit off if I don't. And miss some sections back there of color too. That's why I like to zoom in a lot on these tutorials, just so I can see what I'm doing. If I don't zoom in too much, I miss spots like that and then I've got to come back. So if you think I zoom in and out too much, if I don't, stuff like that happens and it's a pain to have to go back and forth to fix that stuff. So let's get some more of these shadows laid in here around the creases. Maybe I put in too many creases. It's creating a lot of work for me now, going back in, doing all these shadows on every single one. And I could, I guess, time lapse this part, but that's one of the things I like about my tutorials is I don't time lapse. So you get the full on start to finish, no speeding things up. You really get the full effect as far as how long the design takes. And I think that's pretty well done. I think I'll leave it there. So there's that. I think I'm going to add in maybe some shadows here and then shadows here from where I did kind of the bags under the eyes. Draw some in around here too. All right. right, there we go. I think I want to add in some extra shadows in here. I'm going to do these separate though. So if I select this, I don't have this color added in here, but if I select the color of the eyes, I'm just going to drag and drop it down further. So I apologize, this isn't on the color palette, but super easy. Just pick that color, drag it down, and then I'm going to do the shadows for these directly on this layer. So if we go to the layer with the nose and the eyes here, and I'm going to alpha lock this one, and I'm just going to drag in along this side and along this back these darker shadows, so that looks a little bit more inset there. I think it makes it pop a little bit more. So now let's go ahead and work on some highlights. So to do that, let's go ahead and make a new layer. And for this, we're just going to use white for this, nothing crazy. So if we go to white, and like I said, the light source is coming in from here, and going back to our brush, just going to pull in some highlights here at the top. Once again, I'm going to drop the opacity on these so it's not super crazy white and bright. It's going to blend a little bit more. And then from here, you can really just kind of, once again, do some other crazy zigzag stuff like it's the folds coming in. Let's drop the opacity now so we can see where we're at. So go into our layer, hit the N for the blend mode, and drop this down. I think I'm going to go probably about there, about 40%. I think that looks pretty good. And then once again, it's up to you what you want to do. You can just do some crazy stuff here, just adding in little details. The white's a little bit more forgiving too if you start to add in just these crazy zigzags. If you did that with the shadows, it would look maybe a little bit weird, but I think it just kind of builds up the cartoon factor of this. So I think it's okay and turns out pretty cool. You can even do some in here too if you want to drag some around the bottom of the eyes there. So there we go. I think that looks pretty good. Last but not least, let's add in some shadows to the eyes here. So if we go in on the eyes, add in a new layer. Let's make this a clipping mask layer. It's going to lock into the eyes. And then let's do this blue color here. And just kind of drag around the outside of the eyes here. You want this, once again, to kind of follow the curve of the eyes. So if it doesn't have that same curve, see this doesn't have that perfect circular curve, it's not going to look right. So feel free to go back and forth with this. And then we're going to go up to our adjustments, and we're going to go to the blur layer. Just kind of blur this out a little bit, like so. This would be easier too. We want this blue. It'd be easier if we left the red on a separate layer and didn't combine these, because I'm gonna have to go in and erase the overlap in the red. I didn't really think about that, but that's okay. We can just erase this if we go into the airbrush, just making sure that we don't hit the white that's got the blue in it. And there we go. If we want to do a red too, once again, just selecting red. I didn't do this, but selecting red, just dropping down to a darker color. You could go in with an airbrush here and kind of darken that up along the backside as well if you want to make the inside have a little bit of a darker feel to it. So there we go. Last but not least, let's go ahead and give this guy a background. So we've got this purple color here. That's what we're going to use for the background. I'm going to go back to my cartooning, streamline, standard inker. And we're just going to do just some kind of funky shape here in the background. So go down to your bottom layer here, new layer, drag this all the way to the bottom. You want this behind everything. And we're just going to, like I said, just make a kind of funky shape. It's up to you what you want it to look like. Just connecting that, dragging and dropping the color in. I think that looks pretty cool. And then if we go in with the eraser and just go ahead and remove some circles in here. Actually, I'm just going to do it like this. racing here. For the big ones, you might have to do it like that. For the smaller ones, you could actually do it with the brush itself. And once again, this is just almost like busy work, just adding something extra to the design so it's just not a plain head floating in space. This is up to you if you actually want to do this step or not. Totally up to you. I think it looks kind of cool. Just adding this extra background stuff in here. And one over here, one here, and one here. And then from here then, let's make those look a little three-dimensional. So let's make a new layer. We're going to drag this one underneath layer 12, and we're going to switch to this darker purple color here. Make sure we're on our streamline. Zooming in, we're just going to drag around the outside edge of those. So you see it makes it look three-dimensional. Super easy. Super quick way to kind of build up some dimension to your backgrounds like so. And then last but not least, we just got to go ahead and sign this and we will be done. So let me do that. And there we go, a mummy for day 2 of my 31 days of Halloween themed tutorials. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already, and hit that bell for notifications so you can get alerted when I post new videos. Like I said, 1 tutorial a day for the entire month of October, highlighting a different Halloween theme for each day. If you guys do take part in these and follow along with the tutorials, I want to see what you come up with. So if you post them online on Instagram or Twitter, tag me at BJDell. You can also post them in the group over on Facebook. It's called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artists. I'll link it down in the description. You can share the work in there too. I'm sure everybody would love to see it, as would I. As for me, I can be found online, bjdell.com, as well as on Instagram and Twitter at bjdell. Also got the new podcast, Make Money with Your Art, available wherever you listen to podcasts at. And that's it. So until next time, keep creating.